Yeah, so I was looking at the roster. We have so much stuff to get to. That's why we had to cut the intro short. We got so many topics to get to that I think could be 20, 25-minute topics. So we're going to run right into it. I was looking at the Browns roster the other day. And we've talked about who we think the most important players are, who needs to have the biggest season. But when you look at each individual group, I thought there were a couple choices to which unit you felt the best about heading into this season. Which one you were the most confident, which one you think was the best. And there were some others that I didn't think we'd all think were particularly as high as some of the other ones. So I figured let's do a little rankings here and run through the list. And we have 11 categories that we can choose from. We'll go 1 to 11. We have quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive ends, defensive tackles, linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, and special teams.
Boo. Okay. So we can't just do the whole defensive line?
No, two different groups.
Man,
two different groups. We got to go 1 through 11 because it's very different.
Crazy.
You may feel very confident in one and not so confident in the other. So let's start. We're going to go and have a little discussion with each one. We'll go 1 to 11.
Okay.
If 2 of us agree, that'll get the spot. If we all say something different, we'll let Anthony be the tiebreaker. Does that work for you guys?
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
Earl Pearl, which position group on the Browns do you feel the most confident in heading into the upcoming season?
The most confidence that I have in a particular position group will probably be the Cleveland Browns offensive line. I look at the offensive line, led by, to me, Joel Bitonio. You got Wyatt Teller there. You got Ethan Pocic. You got center. We know what Jed Wills is, middle of the road tackle. I like the depth on the offensive line with DeJuan Jones. Huge fan of, Lord have mercy, he's sleeping, James Hudson. Huge fan of him. So, and then with the coach and Bill Callahan, I just like the unit. It's probably been the strongest, the strongest unit, but it's probably been a unit that's, you can say that you trust the most, right, over the last couple of years, despite everything that the Cleveland Browns have gone through. The one thing that you know is, that the line is going to be coached up, more often than not that they're going to do their job, and they still, by every category out there, rank top 5 in the NFL. So,
G, do you agree, disagree? Because I'll tell you, it won't be unanimous. They're not number 1 to me.
When I looked at it the first, the thing that I looked at was I just said, look, hey, I like the offensive line. I think that you know what you're going to get from them. And so if you want the safest, you say offensive line, right? Because, you got all pros up there. Joe Bitonio has been great for a long period of time. Ethan Pocic was rated as one of the top, 5 centers once he got to playing. I even liked DeJuan Jones because he's a guy that I think is going to eventually take over for Jed Wills, who I think is the weak spot on that line. However, I did not have them at the first slot. And the reason I didn't have them at a slot at that number 1 position was looking at other groups. And once you split defensive ends apart, I had to go with D ends.
Yep.
Myles Garrett obviously is rated the best defensive end in the league. You get a Za'Darius Smith, who is an elite pass rusher in his own right, who's done it at a high level with the Vikings. He's done it at a high level with the Packers. He's versatile. He can get after the quarterback. He's the best run defender, I believe, that they've had at that position and pass rusher next to Myles Garrett. My man, young OG Okoronkwo, this dude, listen, he out here, he's a guy who, just think, when they signed him, we thought it was a wrap. We were like, oh, yeah, we'll take him. And then they went and got to Za'Darius Smith. And now you get to use those guys in one package. I even like some of the depth they got. They got the McGuire kid from Missouri. Alex Wright still on the team. Isaiah Thomas showed you something, last year, a little bit at a time. So they got some guys, pieces, and parts they can move in there. I like the defensive end room. And I think anytime you have Myles Garrett, who is probably the best defensive lineman or defensive end in the league, you got to go with that as far as the position rankings go.
I had O-line in my top 3. I had defensive ends number 1 as well. And for the same point you just made, when they signed Obo, I felt really good about that defensive end room. When they got Za'Darius Smith on top of Myles Garrett and Obo, I was like, sheesh, that's 3 of, at least analytically speaking, the top individual pass rushers in the entire league on one defensive line now. So I had defensive ends first. So we will, as a unit here, defensive ends officially up at number 1. Can I start on number 2 here?
Let's go.
Go back down. I want the cornerback room. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson. we know Ward's one of the best cornerbacks in football when he's on the field. I know last year was a bit of a down year, but the potential and the productivity through the first 3 years of his career has been there. He got a $100 million contract, rates out on PFF as one of the better pass coverage guys. Martin Emerson Jr. is our guy, Earl. That's our guy now.
Yeah, that's my
And
dog.
then I think Greg Newsome, when he came on the show, he talked about not loving playing the slot last year because a lot of it's run fits and he's a cover guy. But I think Jim Schwartz and having that new system that he's going to buy into, even if there are some run fit responsibilities, is going to allow him to kind of flourish as that shifty, fluid inside back. And also remember, too, the Browns' run defense was atrocious last year. So if you're the slot corner, teams are still running the ball, as the Falcons did 12 times in a row. If I'm a slot cornerback and I have to stop the run 12 times in a row, I'm pissed at whoever my DC is. I don't think that'll be the case this year, so he's going to get a lot more opportunities to flourish in coverage from the slot. So I went with the cornerback room as number 2. And also you have A.J. Green and some other guys to fill out the back end of that position group.
So it seems like we all had the same 3, maybe offensive line, defensive ends, and the cornerback room.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the cornerback room ranking. When I look at this thing, I really think by the end of the season, we can be talking about M.J. Emerson being the best corner on the Browns. I think the dude is a playmaker. If you look at all the statistical numbers that matter for cornerbacks, he was right there in the top 10 in damn near every category. He was the highest rated defensive back on the Cleveland Browns last year. This is the dude that we seen early on in preseason last year that can get his hands on the football, know how to make plays. I think his breakout game, when you can argue, was the Tampa Bay game. You know, when he went up there and locked up Mike Evans. You have Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome kind of playing more in their natural man-to-man, you know, typical style of play that they played in college, a style of play that they actually flourished in, right? And so under Jim Schwartz and their scheme, you're going to be able to see these 3 particular defensive backs really be able to make plays. And because the defensive line is really the engine that runs this thing, if the defensive line can get home, you know you have 3 bona fide playmakers. And then you talk about the depth. A.J. Green, an undrafted corner a couple years ago who's kind of shined bright, you know, in certain instances when he had his opportunities.
Cam
Excited
Mitchell,
to see about the rookie Cam Mitchell. We know he's a baller. We've seen some of his tape. We've seen what he's done. And so it'll be interesting to see how this room collectively can raise their level of play. I know Denzel is corner 1. You know, we've seen and heard throughout OTAs about him traveling, playing a little bit in the slot. We know that Greg Newsome talked the other day about loving this particular scheme. And I'm just looking at it, you know, M.J. Emerson is a guy that everybody is high on this year. And for all the noise about Denzel Ward, you look up and 23 is your best corner. Now you kind of got a serious lockdown on the lake going on.
And they could mix and match, too, depending on who the other team's best corners. Let's say they're playing, you know, Seattle, for example, and DK Metcalf's the guy you got to shut down. Well, you have a guy in M.J. Emerson who's 6'2", 215 pounds, who physically matches up much better with the big receivers than a guy like Denzel Ward.
Yeah.
And then you're going to play a team that has Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson as their top guy. It's a little smaller, shiftier. Well, guess what? You got Denzel Ward, who's the perfect physical specimen to match up offense or defensively with that kind of receiver on offense. So the ability to mix and match and the versatility is why I am so high on the Browns' defensive backs, especially the cornerbacks for this upcoming season.
I would agree with y'all if not for one thing. My only problem with the defensive backs is the turnovers. I want to see more takeaways. Now, the takeaways and interceptions are not just strictly a function of the defensive back. It all depends on what coverage you're in. It also depends on, you know, who you're guarding and where you get certain targets. If you're getting targeted or you're getting picked on a little bit. So, you know, sometimes, you know, deflections are just as good as interceptions. Yep. But I do want to see more takeaways, and that means more aggressive play. If we can get the front 7 going and we can get the sack total we think we can get, and then you still can get guys that are, you know, I need to see Greg Newsome get his first interception. I would like to see Martin Emerson. He had a tremendous play in the preseason.
Yep.
Where Jacksonville first played it, and I think he got the starting job just off that. It was like, oh, whoa, who's this? We like you. You got ball skills. But I would have to go back and my number 2, I have to say the offensive line. I thought the offensive line and the defensive line was just a little bit different, right? But you still got Bitonio, you still got Teller, you still got Pocic, you still got Conklin, all those other guys, and they have depth. For me, if you ask me who do you think will be more consistent, I would lean just a little bit more to the offensive line rather than the cornerback position. But I would just give you some foreshadowing. Corners come in third for me.
So because me and Earl both had corners, we'll put corners 2. You had offensive line 1. I had them 3. You had them 2. So I think you average that out.
Yeah.
Offensive line's 3. So we all agree, at least in the premise of the top 3
Yep.
in some particular order.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yep.
Let's move on to number 4. Earl, what position group do you have at number 4?
Let's see. We got the defensive ends 1. We got corners 2. We got the offensive line 3.
Correct.
I'm going to go with the quarterback room
Oh, interesting.
at number
Interesting.
4. And here's why, right?
Okay.
Deshaun Watson is the engine that's running that car. We know what Deshaun Watson can be and what he's capable of when all things are equal, right? We know the type of time that he has put in this offseason, studying film, learning the playbook, learning the system, and then we know that he had a huge part in constructing this entire quarterback room. And when you look at the rest of the quarterback room, you got a guy like Josh Dobbs who's very intelligent. We've seen him a lot in preseason last year. We pretty much know what he can bring to the table. Then he goes on to Tennessee, and he's able to ball out in a playoff game that Tennessee actually lost, but it wasn't because of him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Then, you get the rookie that you get out of UCLA, who's another guy who fits the playing style of everybody else that's in that room. And so when I look at this room, I see a very intelligent, athletic group and a bunch of guys that can seemingly make every throw, make some plays with their legs, and they all have this similar style of play. Now, granted, something happens to Deshaun Watson.
Well, take injuries. If Myles Garrett
Right. But if something happens to Deshaun Watson, all bets are off.
Yeah.
However, you do feel a little bit more confident knowing that you have 2 other guys, especially in Dobbs with some experience last year, that can step in and you don't have to alter the offense like you did with Jacoby Brissett switching over to Deshaun Watson. The terminology will be the same. A lot of the calls, a lot of the reads will be the same. So I think that I will put the quarterback room number 4.
I'm going to go this one was actually an easy one just because of the lead dog in the room, and that's running back room.
I'm going with you, too.
Running back room, you look at it's Nick Chubb. That's all you got to understand. All you need to know is his Chubb. So if you got him, I think Jerome Ford will make a nice, serviceable running back. He has a little burst. I like him. Go back and watch his tape at Cincinnati. He had a nice preseason as well. And there's another guy that I think is going to make the team, Demetri Felton, who's going to pay dividends because now you look at what Felton was doing before. Felton could possibly make the team just by being a receiving guy, right? Yeah. So if you look at between him and Kelly, who has played pretty well in the preseason, was given opportunity, he has more versatility. He could be a running back. He's on special teams. He's a gunner. He can return punts. He also can line up as a receiver. So I think, and plus now more out of shotgun, I think really he can mimic some of the stuff that Elijah Moore has been doing. When you talk about what they've been seeing in camp, and Zach Jackson talked about it, guys moving around. He's in the backfield. He's lined up in the slot. He's lined up wide. So versatility is a thing that you look for in these players, and I think they get versatility from Demetri Felton. But, at the end of the day, the bell cow is Nick Chubb. He's the best running back in the league. I think it ain't even really close. And I look at the running game, and a lot of people are going to be surprised this year. I think everybody is really excited about the passing game. But Nick Chubb is still going to be a huge part of the offense. And he might even average more yards per carry based on the fact that they're spreading people out and you can't key on certain things. So I think Chubb has a huge year, and I got the running backs coming at 4.
Full disclosure, I had quarterbacks at 5, and I had running backs at 4. So we're on the same wavelength here, and it comes down to what you said. Gun to my head, who am I more confident will have an unbelievable season, Deshaun Watson or Nick Chubb? I see a 99.9% chance Nick Chubb plays unbelievable, and I see a 95% chance that Deshaun Watson plays really good. So that was my determining factor.
Y'all wrong, though. Like, y'all wrong. I get it. Nick Chubb is the lead horse, just like Deshaun Watson is the lead horse.
Jerome Ford or Josh
I'm more
Dobbs?
confident in Josh Dobbs than I am Jerome Ford. I've seen more Josh Dobbs than I have Jerome Ford. I've seen Josh Dobbs here in Cleveland in the preseason.
Yeah.
I've seen Josh Dobbs in real live game, like trenches type playoff atmosphere type situations. I've seen Jerome Ford in the preseason
but let me
and a
ask you
couple
this.
times on kickoff returns.
Let me ask you this, though. We have seen Josh Dobbs in those situations. He played decent.
He
Like,
did.
He certainly serviceable for a backup. You would
Absolutely.
take that from a backup quarterback
Absolutely.
every day of the week. In a world where Deshaun Watson doesn't exist and a world where Nick Chubb doesn't exist, who are you more confident can play up to the level of the guy in front of them? How
It'd be
what is a
Jerome
bigger
Ford,
game?
but that's not the world we live in. It would be
But
Jerome
I
Ford.
think for ranking these two, I think in that case it would be.
Okay, but even if let's go to 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to DTR and then let's go to what, Dimitri Felton.
Let's pray we never have to actually get to that conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
either
yeah,
way,
yeah.
but
Fair,
if you
fair.
go either way, Felton's been in the league 2 or 3 years. DTR is a rookie, and you can honestly say they're right around the same player.
That's a wash.
And so if that's a wash, I'm gonna take the rookie over the guy that's been in the league 3 years and ain't been kind of able to get it going. So I don't think none of us is too far off, but come on, man, the quarterback is definitely going ahead of the running back.
I mean, quarterback is the hardest position in the game, right?
Yeah.
It's the most difficult position in all the sports. And if you just say take Deshaun Watson out and you got Dobbs and whatever DTR,
I think your season's done.
it's a wrap. But if you took Nick Chubb out of the offense, right, and you still had Jerome Ford and you still had Dimitri Felton, we've seen before where the Cleveland Browns can win with what?
I mean, Dearness Johnson.
Dearness Johnson.
100 something, 120 yards in the one game he started?
Yeah, these guys, they'll plug right in and get their minutes, right, and get their money off. I think, when you look at it from a running back position, it's easier to come in and contribute as a running back than it is a quarterback. And I saw Josh Dobbs in Tennessee, and he wasn't a world beater in that game.
He was perfectly serviceable for a
Yeah,
back.
he was-
I was about to say, what did he do wrong,
He
though?
was- he's
He
serviceable.
put Tennessee in a situation to win.
I mean, that's
That's
it.
all you can ask for.
That's the Jacoby
And-
Brissett.
and- okay, and we're talking about quarterback being the hardest position, right?
Right.
Look what Kevin Stefanski has done with the quarterbacks prior
great point.
to. So if you look at his track record, even forget the overall record of the team, but just look at how the previous quarterbacks have played under
It's the best Baker ever played.
best Baker
the
he's
best
ever played,
Brissett ever played.
best Brissett you ever played.
And even
hopefully
Kirk
you
Cousins
get
back in Minnesota.
Hopefully you get the best Deshaun Watson that you ever got. And so if you have a situation for whatever reason you got to go to Dobbs or you just got to go to Dobbs, you take the experience he gained last year plus knowing what Kevin Stefanski can do. I just think that's what gives them the edge as well.
I got a question real quick, and I don't remember. You guys have to correct me. Dobbs was here last preseason, and they cut him midseason, right?
No, he got claimed off a practice squad, I think. He didn't get cut. I think they claimed him off the practice squad.
How did he end up in Tennessee? Did he
Don't quote me on this. I think he got cut when Deshaun Watson came back.
Anthony, will you look that up to see how?
I think he was Brissett's backup
he
until
was
Watson
Brissett's
came
backup,
back.
and they didn't want to carry 3.
Yeah.
They ended up signing, so they did. So I don't know. I mean, obviously you had to make room for Deshaun Watson. But to cut a guy, and this is not a knock on Dobbs. I mean, we're arguing semantics now. I had quarterbacks at 5, running backs at 4. Did you have running backs at 5?
Yeah, I had running backs so far.
So we're flipping over one spot here.
Tomato.
But I think we're at the point, and we can all agree on this. Nick Chubb, elite. Deshaun Watson should be elite.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they have those two guys healthy, the Browns' offense, regardless of who else is there,
We straight.
should be pretty damn good. All right, moving on. So we'll put running backs at 4 because we had 2 on that. And do you agree quarterbacks 5 then? 1 under? Are you cool with that, G? Because me and Earl already voted for that.
I'm sitting here thinking.
Because I'm ready to go to 6 when you guys are.
You putting QBs at 5 here?
QBs, as long as G, I mean, yeah, actually, because me and Earl already voted for it, so.
Yeah, I would say that. I have them a little bit above this next group of people that I'm going to choose. So go ahead.
All right, so I'll start with 6. And this is where I think it starts to get a little spicy. I feel like this is where we're going to start deviating.
Let's go.
I have the safeties at 6. I think Grant Delpit's in for a breakout season. He fits the exact mold of a safety that Jim Schwartz has turned into not just a Pro Bowl, but all-pro kind of players. Stick your foot in the ground, go make plays, because now you have a guy in Juan Thornhill next to you who I'm not going to say is going to make up for your mistakes, but is a ball hawk in the secondary who can be more of the coverage guy while Grant Delpit becomes the impact play, make it happen, light dudes up, force fumbles, create turnovers guy in the box and in the secondary and coverage. We saw a lot of progression from the beginning of last season to the end. That was with Joe Woods. I'm taking everyone on this defense and saying just by the addition of Jim Schwartz, they're taking at least 1 to 1.5 steps up. And I actually think between those two and Rodney McLeod, who's played in Jim Schwartz's defense, who is the savvy veteran who comes with a wealth of winning experience. I actually feel really confident in the entire Browns secondary. Cornerbacks a little more than the safety just because of the caliber of players. But I am really high on those two safeties and really those three safeties as we enter the upcoming season.
This was close for me. I could see where you went safety. Juan Thornhill is an upgrade to me over John Johnson. I think when you bring in guys like that, you really solidify what you want to do, and I don't think you'll have that many busted assignments. With that being said,
I had question marks on other groups that I didn't have with the safeties, which is why they may not be the most talented of the groups left, but I put them higher. So I'm curious to see where you're going with this.
Just because of this person who's the number one dude in the room,
I know what you're doing. See?
gotta go receiver.
I know what you're doing here.
And here's the crazy part. This is an oxymoron. I'm putting the receivers there, but I'm still the most apprehensive about the receivers.
It's fair.
At the same time, because I could look at it and say, okay, I got Amari Cooper right here. He had one of his best years he's ever had with a Jacoby Brissett. We feel like that's going to get better. Donovan Peoples-Jones is coming off his best year, right? You got Elijah Moore, who is a guy who everyone raves about at practice. Mm-hmm. Elijah Moore's killing the game. They're moving them all around. And you got those three guys, which I think are very dependable. However, what still makes the receiving core a big question mark is the rest of the dudes. Cedric Tillman, I don't even know what he is. He's a rookie. I can't count it. Marquise Goodwin, I don't even know he's going to play this year. Shout out to him. Hope he gets better.
Schwartz is practicing today for the first
time. Schwartz
is
practicing the first time since 2019. Clap it up. Listen, I haven't seen you play since Gus Malzahn was at Auburn. You know what I'm saying? And you was the rocket kick returner. All they did,
he got 4 reverses a game.
4 reverses a game.
He took one of the house against A&M.
Yeah, did he take almost 2?
Almost, but he ran right at me. I was on the sideline for that game, and he celebrates right in the camera, and I was like, this dude's good. And then I get here, and I'm like,
that's that same kid.
I was wrong.
We missed that. And so I don't know nothing about him. David Bell is let me say that I strive David Bell. David Bell is a wide receiver, but really in his heart of heart, he's a tight end.
What?
You're gonna steal the O-line from Kelvin Bay. He's one biscuit away from being a tight end.
Yeah. But he can eat all the food he wants. He's still not gonna get bigger, but he's still a tight end. He has tight end mobility, tight end hands, tight end juke ability. He's just slow overall. And I just told y'all he's not that good. Now we're gonna see. He got opportunity. Maybe he could be a possession guy. But the rest of the roster, I have no clue. But just because your top 3 are good, I would have to say I would go with the receivers.
All right, so I'm with G on this. I got the receivers above the safeties. Okay. We know what Amari Cooper is, man. Dude is about 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns every year. A lot of people believe, at least from the fantasy football standpoint, that he's probably going to have the best season of his career. I know he's kind of out for the next couple of days. I know Kevin Stefanski talked to the media this morning, so he's still not practicing. Again, not really worried about Amari long term. As long as he's out there, I'm overly confident in what he can do. I felt like last year was DPJ's ceiling, and if his ceiling is somewhere around 700 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, sign me up for that. I think Elijah Moore, when he came out of the draft into the NFL, there were a lot of expectations of this dude just being an all-out playmaker. Here's a dude who can play inside, outside. You can put him in the backfield. I see the Browns using Elijah Moore a lot like San Francisco used Deebo Samuels. So I think that's a bonus. You did a lot of footwork on Cedric Tillman. We know Jalen Wyatt was the big name talked about, but before Tillman got hurt, he was the man at Tennessee. You got a guy that has a first-round talent that slipped a little bit, maybe due to injuries, maybe due to some other things. And even though he is a rookie, you've seen a lot during OTAs. You've seen a lot during a lot of the off-season programs that he's built some chemistry with Deshaun Watson already. You haven't heard anything about him putting the ball on the ground or anything like that, or not being able to run his routes correctly. So that's encouraging to hear. I read Mary Kay Cabot's reports this morning, and there's a lot of talk coming out of the Greenbrier right now about David Bell being actually impressive. Due to the injuries to Marquise Goodwin and Amari Cooper not being there, he's getting more reps. And the beautiful thing about it is he's taking advantage of those reps, right? And then, you got a lot of other young guys that's in that room that has showed some flashes of some things. And then we got to keep in mind that when you talk about an elite quarterback or a guy that should be elite,
Elevates
like
everybody.
Deshaun Watson, is going to elevate that entire group. So when I look at the wide receiver group, and then I heard Deshaun Watson and read his body language as far as, you know, him speaking highly of the position group and seeming like that he had confidence in what they're able to do, I think that raises everything. So that's why I got the wide receivers above the safeties.
So I had receivers at 7. So once again, we're flip-flopping. And the reason I had them at 7 was I just think there are some question marks in the group that I didn't have with the safeties. It's early in camp. It's July. I get it. But Amari Cooper is coming off a season where he had core surgery following the year, and now a minor tweak's keeping him out 5 to 7 days. I understand it's July. I've talked to some people down in Greenbrier. They said they're just being extra cautious. But, gee, you know, a minor tweak could sometimes be the ball rolling on something more serious.
A minor tweak is never minor.
And I'm just a little bit worried that he may be dealing with some health issues. He's getting older. He's going to turn 30. Or is he 29 turning 30 or 28 turning 29 this year?
Says the guy that's 30. You feel like you old?
Let me see.
No, but my body doesn't feel the same after I play basketball as it did when I was 22. I'll tell you that. So I'm not worried about Amari. I think he's to be very productive this year.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a little bit. I have like a 2% concern level that a minor tweak's keeping a guy out of camp now for 5 to 7 days. I know it's July. I'm not like panicking. I'm just someone to keep an eye on. Elijah Moore. I think he's going to be really good. We just haven't seen it yet. I think he's going to be good. DPJ, solid dude. Tillman, question. David Bell, question. Remember last year the reports were David Bell didn't drop a single pass all camp. Then he played like 4 snaps a game. So sometimes camp reviews don't equal
Hey, man.
actual on-field. There's just a little more question marks in the receiver room than I had at safety, which is why I went safety 6, receiver 7. But once again, we're splitting hairs here on something that I think are pretty equal.
I can understand that. You look at Juan Thornhill, man, he brings that winning pedigree, right? He brings that dog. He brings that ability to make plays. I'm a big fan of Grant Delpit. I think Grant Delpit
really good.
might be like one of those breakout players this year, one of those playmaker dudes that might actually score about 2 or 3 touchdowns this season by himself.
Who has more touchdowns this year, David Bell or Grant Delpit?
I'm going to go with David Bell.
That's so disrespectful.
I'm going to go with David Bell.
The fact
that he even asked that question, that's
so
foul.
disrespectful.
Well, you just said 2 or 3 for Delpit, and
I'm
Bell
just
had
saying.
none last year.
I'm just saying, but when I look
There
at
you
it,
go.
I also like the addition of Rodney McLeod, man, somebody who's very familiar with Jim Schwartz. But outside of that, I just feel like the wide receiver room has more familiar depth
Totally fair.
than with the safety
Totally
room.
fair.
With that being said, they need one more, man. When I go to sleep at night, you know
You
what
still
I'm
think
saying?
they need another one?
The speed factor, when you look at Deshaun Watson when he was at his best, he had Will Fuller, speed guy. Brandon Cooks, speed guy.
That's real.
Guys, he throws a beautiful deep ball.
Yeah.
But you need guys to run up underneath it. And I commend the Browns for trying to do that. They thought they had that. And Marquise Goodwin, he showed he could do it in OTAs with catching a couple long passes from him. But now you have him, and now you got Anthony Schwartz trying to come back and see if he can actually catch the football. But to me, when I go to sleep at night, the speed factor keeps me up because for this offense to reach, I would say, the pinnacle of what they are, in my mind, the offense that's the most dangerous is the one that can threaten you at every level. I got a guy that can be going deep every play. I got a guy that's a route runner. I got that in Mark Cooper. I got a guy that is a change of pace, quick in open space, Elijah Moore.
Yep.
I got a running back that just give me 6 a pop. I got an offensive line that can move guys and pass block, and I got Deshaun Watson.
It's the one element
It's the
missing.
one thing missing. It's like you taste that drink, and you be like, listen, I want a mixed drink. And you be at home making Harry Buffalo back in the day. And you be like,
I mean, I think we'll get an opportunity to really see what it was. You know,
More
Andrew
Everclear.
Berry talked about you have the team that you put together in the spring, and that's the team that you bring to camp. And you get the opportunity to really analyze that squad.
See
and
what's missing.
See what's
Yeah.
missing, see what works, see what's don't. I do agree, you know, that speed element not being there, that's real. You know, we heard Ross Tucker talk about it. You know, we heard Zach Jackson talk about it. Like, Marquise Goodwin not being there is going to have an impact because clearly he was a bigger part of what the Browns was doing that even we all thought. You know, we thought he was like a rotational guy, but clearly they got major plans for him. And so if he's not able to play due to his serious health issues, then you do need to like probably research how can you get another guy that fits what he was going to do. And I think as we go through preseason, I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns actually traded for a wide receiver.
I wouldn't be shocked either.
I would actually advocate doing that.
Yeah.
See what you got. See one last time if Schwartz can be that guy. See if you got another dude that happens to pop up somewhere. But if you get to that last preseason game and everybody's on a 93-man roster and then they cut them at once, look around the league and see who you can get.
Yeah.
And the Browns have a plethora of talent at certain positions that other teams covet, like defensive end. They can't keep them all.
Yeah.
Potentially at cornerback. They got a bunch of really good corners that maybe you could swap. In my notes, it's funny. I had if Goodwin was healthy, I'd have them above safeties. With Goodwin's uncertainty, that's why I put safeties at 6, receivers at 7. But you guys outvoted me, so receivers are 6.
I had safeties.
You had safeties at 7.
I had
So
safeties
safeties
after that.
7. At 8, I had the special teams group,
Okay.
which I think is a little high as I'm looking back on it. But I really liked Ford as a kick returner. I really liked Jakeem Grant as a punt returner. I think he'll be healthy enough to give you that return factor. And I'm banking on Cade York taking a big step forward. And maybe that's a little bit of my lack of confidence in David Njoku, which is why I had them over tight end. But I think the special teams unit and what Bubba Ventrone brings to that group will elevate everybody to a level where it's going to be a pretty good special teams unit.
I went with tight end. I think Jordan Akins is a guy that is going to be able to make some plays. I think Harrison Bryant is a guy who is going to be a trade target. I think he's the guy that you package with a pick to go get another wide receiver.
Smart.
So I think just by default, he's a dude that that people will like around the league. And David Njoku, and that's the thing that we got to understand. They're expecting one of the biggest X factors in this entire offense is this: does David Njoku play like a top 5 tight end?
Yeah.
And if he plays like a top 5 tight end, that opens up everything. That just at
You
that
can't
point,
stop them if they have if they have Njoku playing at that level. There's no way you could physically stop the run game, all the weapons on the outside, and cover the middle with Njoku if he's playing up to the level you think he can be, and Deshaun Watson.
Jason said this yesterday. Do you all believe it that the Browns might only keep 2 tight ends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be Akins over Bryant.
I think it's hard to I think you all are right. It's just hard for me to fathom
Kevin Stefanski doing that.
Kevin Stefanski only keeping 2 tight ends.
But look, and this is the best problem to have. Look at the talent that they have at certain positions that you're going to have to sacrifice Harrison Bryant for. And I know it's weird because Stefanski, I don't say he's a tight end fetish, but the dude loves his tight end.
Right.
Let's be honest. The guy loves his tight ends. No pun intended. But dude is
there you go.
very big in the
There you
football
go.
position. I saw
Good catch.
I saw GA.
I was over there like,
Pulse was coming.
But,
it was
like,
coming.
You may have to keep an extra defensive end. Like, are you going to keep Isaiah Thomas or Harrison Bryant? Or, like, Alex Wright? Those are the decisions that are going to have to come down to when it makes the 53-man roster.
you know,
And it's a good problem to have.
No, it
You're
really
cutting
is.
someone good because you have so much talent.
does this scare you a little bit? Like,
Everything scares me, dude.
so when it comes to Stefanski, this popped in my head when you talk about the playbook. When you look at other good teams, other good coordinators, and with weapons, like doesn't it seem like those teams, like if you play for the Dolphins, 2 people getting the ball. That's all we throwing to, because we gonna make sure we accent those guys. If you play Kansas City, Kelsey about to get the ball, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you have a spreadonomics.com offense, these guys will do dink and dunk. I'm going to throw the ball, spreadonomics. Here's Bell for 2 yards. Here's Njoku. Amari Cooper catches. That's cute. But is there something the Cleveland Browns can go to that's the bread and butter and say, I got this guy and I'm about to wear you out with him? I see that all over the league.
Chubb.
All right, so can I let me try to defend that real quick, because Kevin Stefanski know how to scheme somebody open.
Very good.
There's been guys. I get the dink and duck, and you're right about that. But go back, watch the all 22, and watch some of those plays where the quarterback is making the choice for that 4-yard dink, and you got a guy who ran the proper route who's open 15 yards down the field. So I think Kevin Stefanski does a great job of scheming up routes that can get guys open further down the field. It's just a matter of the quarterbacks in the past, and some of Deshaun Watson too, not making the right decision at the right time to hit the guy that's open down the field.
I don't think it's fully fair to evaluate Kevin Stefanski on anything we've seen so far.
I agree with that.
I don't think it's fair in the 11 games with Jacoby Brissett last year, even though it was Brissett's best 11. He doesn't have that extend the field, push the ball down mentality as a quarterback. He is a game manager by nature. Let's not turn the ball over. Baker, even at his peak, was a gunslinger. And you guys were here and I wasn't at the time, but
He still turned the ball over.
he turned the ball over, and I think Stefanski had to reel him in and say, hey, these interceptions are killing us more than any one individual great play. You got to be a little more cautious. And at the end of his tenure in Cleveland, he was second-guessing making some of those tougher downfield throws because he was so scared to make a mistake. With Deshaun Watson, we know his arm talent is incredible, off the charts. He has the ability to make every single throw on the football field, and I think Stefanski finally has a quarterback now that will unlock all the creativity, offensive guru genius, maestro-ness inside his brain to find guys, not necessarily in that like 6 to 9, 6 to 11 yard range, but in that 11 to 19, 11 to 25. Not necessarily deep balls, but that intermediate deep game passing that we just haven't seen in Cleveland in at least the last 3.5 years.
Listen, we've talked about this ad nauseum almost, right? When you have Baker Mayfield here, the facts are the facts. Baker had a great rookie season. Kudos to him. It was downhill from there. But Kevin Stefanski did a great job of hiding what he didn't do well and exposing what he did do well. You turn around and then you got Jacoby Brissett, and he does the same thing. A quarterback that's limited in a lot of different areas, but let me hide where you're weak at and expose where your strengths are to put you in position to have success. We heard Deshaun Watson say 2 days ago, the entire playbook is open to me. And I think that's something that Kevin Stefanski has always envisioned once he took this job. I believe once he took this job, he had probably 5 to 10 pages of the playbook that he knew he had to keep on ice because he didn't have the proper quarterback to run some of the plays. And so when we talk about 13 personnel or this package and that package, we have to understand that there's a whole nother level of this that he's been waiting to unlock, it seems like, since he's got here. Yeah. You know, I think that he thought that year 2 of Baker, he would have had a more opportune time to do so, but Baker didn't take the offseason seriously. And when he didn't take it seriously, he couldn't grow. Again, Jacoby Brissett is what Jacoby Brissett is. But looking at Deshaun Watson and knowing that he has the capability to make every throw, to know that he's a quarterback that knows how to read defense, and then to know finally that, yeah, he's getting plays, but Kevin Stefanski is giving him the freedom to change the play and get the Browns in the right situation. I think that you're going to see this marriage between Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski blossom, and I think that Kevin Stefanski is going to get back to earning some of the respect that he should have as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. I'm excited for year 4, Kevin.
I know we got to move on. We got a lot left. So did you go tight ends at 8 there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we had tight ends at 8. What'd you guys have at 9? Special teams is my vote at 9. We're gonna run through these real quick.
I would go with.
We have special teams, D tackle.
I would go with D tackles.
Earl. Special teams, D tackle, linebackers.
Special teams, linebackers, D tackles.
I got D tackles, special teams, linebackers.
I got special teams, D tackles, linebackers. So officially, and then we'll toss it to Anthony. Our order went defensive ends, cornerbacks, offensive line, running back, quarterback, receiver, safety, tight end, special teams, defensive tackles, and linebackers.